I don't see any. No bill introductions. Okay. Moving right along, you should have a copy of the meeting minutes. It was emailed out to you, I believe, last week, and then there should be a copy here. So do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Okay. Second, let the note show that Representative Schreiber is a second on that. Okay. Well, at this time, we've got, looks like Ed Cross is the first up. He's going to give us a little update on the state of the oil and gas industry. I always call it Kyoga. I assume that's okay, but I'm sure you will tell everybody here that what it stands for. And I'd say about half the committee is fairly new to utilities. So take it away, Ed. I appreciate you being here.
Here, I think that's on now. Okay. Hello, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me come here today. And I want to welcome everybody here today, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts on America's energy picture and the state of the oil and gas industry, including some of the challenges and opportunities that are faced by the Kansas independent oil and gas industry. I am Edward Cross, and I'm president of the Kansas Independent Oil and Gas Association, or Kyoga, as Mr. Chairman had talked to. And it's my honor and privilege to serve this great industry that enhances life experiences and improves the quality of life of people around the world. And I'm lucky to be able to work on the things I like to work on, but I'm even more lucky to get to work with the men and women that make up this great industry. Kyoga members account for 92% of the oil and gas produced in Kansas. And with nearly 3,000 members across the entire state, Kyoga is the lead state and national advocate for the Kansas independent oil and gas industry. Also in the Kansas oil and gas industry, we have the Eastern Kansas Oil and Gas Association, which Kevin Gregg, I think, represents him. I think Kevin is back here. And also the API, American Petroleum Institute, which I think Matt Hickam is now working with the API. Unfortunately, Matt couldn't make it today, this morning. You have a packet of information, a lot of information about different things in there, including our legislative policy agenda, strategic analysis of the industry, state of the oil and gas industry, emissions policy, and more. And my presentation is based on all of that information in there. I'm not going to read all that, but that could be reference material for you. So when I look at crude oil market dynamics, while the U.S. and the Kansas economies continue to recover from the worst of the coronavirus, significant concerns exist, including high inflation, volatility in energy markets, U.S. trade, and foreign policies, and more. Inflation is a staggering 14% over the last 2 years, and real wages have fallen 4%, and the stock market is down 16%. Most destructive for the economy has been the historic federal spending spree. Over the last 2 years, the federal government has added $4.8 trillion in new spending, which the Federal Reserve said was the main inflation contributor. The cost to heat a home, drive to work, and run a business have increased exponentially over the last 2 years. Currently, a record 20 million Americans are behind on their utilities, and 1 in 6 families will receive a disconnect notice from a provider this year. Now we beg foreign dictators for oil, while domestic production has still not returned to its 2019 level, despite oil prices being much higher. In 2 short years, we have gone from American energy dominance to American energy despair. So global oil prices retreated in late 2022 as the outlook for energy consumption deteriorated. Analysts project energy consumption declines with the onset of a business cycle slowdown or a recession. Oil market's 6-month calendar spread swung into a contango from a backwardation position. The explosive cyclical upswing in both the economy and oil that began after the first wave of the coronavirus and lockdowns in the second quarter of 2020 peaked in the second quarter of 2022. Since then, most indicators have pointed to a decelerating economic growth in oil consumption. Global oil and energy consumption have been falling since the third quarter of 2022 under the impact of exceptionally high prices and slowing economy. But the impact was initially masked by concerns about a planned introduction of a price cap on Russia's crude and refined products exports. Analysts anticipated Russia's response to the price cap would be to cut production by more than the economic slowdown would cut consumption. And fears about the impact kept prices elevated even increased them from late September through October of 2022, despite the increasingly poor outlook for the economy. The underlying deterioration in consumption was unmasked, and which led to a sharp drop in prices, about a 20% drop that was consistent with past downturns in the global business cycle. Federal policies and regulations restricting U.S. production means that a volume war for market share is less likely to be fought this year than in the past, so that prices are unlikely to fall as far this time. So when I look at the Kansas oil and gas industry and look at the world market, we look at who are independents. We say we're the independent oil and gas industry, and independents actually drill and produce the wells, get the oil and gas out of the ground. We don't market the end products, and we produce marginal wells. And marginal wells are defined by the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission as wells that make 10 barrels of oil per day or less, or 60,000 cubic feet of gas per day or less. And across the United States, small independents drill 95% of the U.S. wells, and in Kansas, 92% of the oil and 63% of natural gas produced by small independent producers. The independent producers are small businesses that raise their capital through the wellhead, so we're not tapping equity markets for the capital. The cash flow that they get from drilling and producing a well is what they use to continue to increase and drill more wells. They live and work right here in Kansas, and they're the friends and neighbors of everybody here in Kansas. And for the independents, every $1 million of CapEx or capital expenditures for independents results in $1.1 million of total taxes generated, along with the creation of 39 jobs. Every $1 million of CapEx for independents results in $2.4 million of direct and $5.1 million of overall contribution to the gross domestic product. In 2022, the Kansas oil and gas industry generated nearly $3.6 billion in output, supporting over 100,000 jobs and $3 billion in family income here in Kansas. The industry is an important element of the Kansas economy today and will be a critical part of the economy going forward. Oil and gas fields are in 89 of the 105 counties in this state. And, as an industry, we're always in one of the top industries in terms of gross state product in the state. In calendar year 2022, 76% of the value of the Kansas oil and gas industry came from oil production, 24% from natural gas production. Marginal wells, as I said, are defined as wells that make less than 10 barrels of oil per day. In Kansas, the average oil well makes 2 barrels of oil per day. Average natural gas well makes 23,000 cubic feet of gas per day. So it's it's amazing that is supporting over 100,000 jobs and $3 billion in family income. Direct employment in Kansas oil and gas industry is 13,800 folks, paid $940 million for an average salary of nearly $60,000 per year. And in areas where oil and gas are found in the state, industry represents a quarter of the jobs in some counties and 60 to 70% of the property tax. So when we look at oil production in Kansas, during last year, calendar year 2022, was over 28 million barrels, which is up about 1.9% from the year before. But since 2014, Kansas oil production has dropped about 43%. Kansas natural gas production dropped by 3% in calendar year 2022. Actually, a 1.9% increase in oil production in the state is really phenomenal. You'll see in some of the data, we have like 40,000 oil wells. All of those on a natural decline will decline 11 to 12% annually. So when you have that many wells declining by that much, and you're able to certainly increase production, but even keep the overall production flat, means that there's a lot of activity going on out there just to keep that curve flat. And we saw that go up 1.9% last year. So as the economy began to recover and market conditions improved in 2022, as I said, activity increased, and result tax collection to the state of Kansas and Kansas counties increased in calendar year 2022. Kansas collected about $38.6 million more in oil and gas severance tax in the calendar year, and about $5 million more in ad valorem tax receipts in calendar year 2022 as compared to 2021. But again, the severance tax receipts remain nearly 46% below where they were in 2014. And ad valorem taxes or property taxes to counties remains about 53% below where they were in 2014. And when you look at the activity, this is the interesting thing about Kansas this year. In 2022, the KCC has reported 1,681 drilling permits were issued in 2022. That's a 30% increase over the last year. And also in Kansas saw 41 to 60 drilling rigs running each month in the state. That's a 77% increase over last year. One of the most interesting things is that the number of oil and gas drilling permits issued in Kansas in 2022 was second in the nation, only to Texas. Now, our wells in Kansas are not drilling horizontal wells and things like they have in the Permian Basin in Kansas are vertical wells, but it's the industry's been very busy this last year. So whenever you look at what they've been doing, the COVID-19 impact oil and gas industry, just like it did everyone else. Nearly 5,000 wells were shut in 2020, and the industry experienced over $810 million in lost oil output. So they've been working in 2021 and 2022 to optimize supply chain relationships, improve efficiencies, and refocus the CapEx on the most resilient short cycle projects. They also work to acquire additional properties and to try to get more and better employees in there. So in Kansas, improved productivity is less about improved technology and more about better application of existing technology. So when you look at the energy outlook for 2023, it remains subject to heightened levels of uncertainty. After a tumultuous 2020, when Kansas crude oil prices averaged $29.79 a barrel, crude oil prices began a slow recovery in 2021 and 2022 as the economy began to recover and demand began to return. Kansas crude oil prices averaged $57.77 a barrel in 2021 and $84.63 a barrel in 2022. Ongoing concerns about global economic conditions increase uncertainty in the oil markets. With more global oil production than consumption, we can expect global oil inventories to increase over the next 2 years, putting downward pressure on oil prices. The Energy Information Administration just came out with their short-term energy outlook. They came out with that on January 10th of this year, and they project Kansas crude oil prices to average about $68 a barrel in 2023, which is down about 19% from 2022. And right now they changed that, going out to the future. But right now they look at that to fall again in 2024. Right now they're projecting a 6% fall. Today, before I came over here, Kansas posted crude oil prices $70 a barrel. So we see that there are some downward pressures on the market going forward. The prevailing view that the energy transition is a linear trajectory from oil and other fossil fuels to renewables is misleading and potentially dangerous to a world that continue to be thirsty for all energy sources. To place expected future demand in context, the 2022 World Energy Outlook sees the need to annually add an average of 2.7 million barrels of oil equivalent per day in the period from now till 2045. From 2021 to 2045, total world energy demand is expected to increase by 23%. Population and energy demand growth grow together, as always been the case. So the driver of global energy demand is non-OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development Nations. So it would be the non-OECD countries that increased by almost 69 million barrels of oil equivalent per day. India alone will account for 28% of that rise. So the biggest factor is population growth. From 2021 to 2045, the world will gain 1.6 billion people. And only 51 million of that growth will live in economic developed or OECD countries. The Middle East and Africa will grow by 747 million, India by 238 million, OPEC nations by 244 million, and other Asian nations by 290 million. China's population is expected to decline over this period. So rising populations drive economic growth. So the OECD's, or the Economic Developed Nations, GDP growth rate to 2045 is expected to be 1.7% annually, where non-OECD worlds is expected to grow by 3.8% on that. So more people will need more fuel. So oil's share of the total energy mix in 2045 will only decline from 30.9% to 28.6%. Coal will fall further from 26.1% to 16.6%. Natural gas will rise as well as nuclear, hydro, and biomass. And the biggest growth area will be renewables, which will go from the current 2.6% in 2021 to 10.9% in 2045. So really what the message is for this is if you're in the oil business today, you will likely be in the oil business in 2045 as well. Despite the aspirational policies attempting to define a transition away from fossil fuels, actions speak louder than words. Countries are showing every day that they are more interested in affordable energy than in paying a green premium. That's proving particularly true in light of energy price crisis, whether considering China's interest in buying Russian oil or Germany's decision to hold on to coal. But you need to believe what you see and what is actually happening in the marketplace, not necessarily what you hear. Germany and California show that alternative energy is really just supplemental energy. When we look at natural gas, we've seen a slow rebound in natural gas production. It's expected in 2023, expect about 2% more than in 2022. Natural gas is one of the preferred sources of energy in this country, not only for electricity in factories, but mainly as heating source for people's homes. Over 50% of U.S. homes are heated by natural gas, and even those that use electric heat pay for natural gas price increases through the back door, as 38% of total U.S. natural gas consumption goes into providing electricity. Increased onshore natural gas production was a historic game changer as we went from a country that couldn't produce enough to meet our own needs to the biggest producer in the world. And our increased production of natural gas has dramatically lowered greenhouse gas emissions. U.S. natural gas production grew by 10 billion cubic feet per day in 2018, which was an 11% increase, and was the largest annual increase in production on record. But federal policies over the last couple of years have created a situation where U.S. production becomes stagnant as opposing to growing. Natural gas production fell in 2021, and as a result, natural gas future prices rose 94% over the last 2 years. And that's the biggest surge in natural gas prices going back to the year 2000. So when we look at some of the challenges and opportunities that we have in our industry, we have several of those at both the state and federal level. And one area where policymakers are expected to work to find a compromise is in the area of energy policy. During times of economic recession and recovery, the public's priorities revolve around improving the economy. And this extends to energy legislation. According to several recent surveys, the U.S. public wants Congress to provide energy legislation that will help bolster the economy, protect the environment, and require very minimal personal sacrifice by the consumer. And we can expect the 118th Congress to propose an energy initiative that not only promote renewable energy, but protect the economic benefits currently provided by fossil fuel industries. The public primarily sees energy policy as an economic issue or an environmental issue, with some individuals see it as a national security issue. Republicans primarily view energy policy as an economic issue, and this is in stark contrast to those individuals who view energy policy through an environmental perspective. Democrats are far more likely to view energy policy as an environmental issue compared to Republicans. You can see that survey in your data there. Also, individuals with annual household income of over $100,000 and college graduates are more likely to associate energy policy as an environmental issue. So the energy policy challenges for 118th Congress will be to mediate these two opposing viewpoints to create policy that is beneficial to the economy and the environment. You know, the most pressing issues facing the U.S. economy in the foreseeable future are not those arising from climate change or energy transition. Rather, the factors to watch are inflation, rising energy costs, and national security threats. The public is divided as to whether U.S. energy policy is an economic or environmental issue. Essentially, the public wants a strong economy while improving environmental standards, and we can expect Congress to try to achieve that outcome. Most folks across the nation are not financially secure enough to deal with rising energy costs and unwilling to make significant changes to their lifestyle. Republicans and Democrats will need to work together to improve energy policy, and this will be difficult to do due to the competing interests of industries and environmental organizations. Environmental organizations want policy that utilizes the highest environmental standards, and industry wants policy that has minimal impact to the economy. If energy legislation does not serve the best interest of the public, it offers no incentive for the public to make significant changes in their lifestyle. So is there an energy policy that creates a compromise of all interested parties and public expectations? Is that better than no energy policy at all? And that's a question that the 118th Congress will have to answer. But one thing is certain, the public places high priority on energy policy and will continue to be dissatisfied with the direction of energy policy unless progress is made. So when we look at emissions as another challenge for our industry, just a few years ago, no one could have imagined that the U.S. could increase production of oil and natural gas while cutting greenhouse gas emissions, which are now near 25-year lows. According to the EPA, the U.S. emitted 14% fewer energy-related carbon emissions in 2019 than 2005. Methane emissions are down 14%. The EPA in November of 2022 came out with their supplemental proposed rulemaking on methane. And the proposal is contrary to the congressional intent of the Inflation Reduction Act, which exempts smaller wells from the regulation. So this is something that we're working on now. We see administrative agencies in Washington that are truly engaged in the practice of changing, altering, repealing, and amending laws after the fact, and doing so unapologetically. In fact, they're saying without much bashfulness that their role and responsibility at the agency level is to improve upon a statute if they disagree with it. And this creates a lot of regulatory uncertainty. So whenever they first came out with their proposal in EPA, they said that they would regulate anything that did not put out more than 3 tons per year of methane. So the U.S. Department of Energy, a third party, did a study of wells. They took samples here in Kansas as well as marginal wells from around the nation. And they found that if a well makes 6 barrels of oil equivalent per day or less, that it would be less than 3 tons per year. As a matter of fact, the DOE study here in Kansas found that there was no quantifiable or measurable emissions of methane or volatile organic compounds from marginal wells or tank facilities. So we'll be, the comments to the EPA will be on February 13th. We'll be putting those some in there, but it should be noted that emissions relative to the oil and gas production were down nearly 70% between 2011 and 2019, and this is EPA data. The Energy Information Administration in 2019 showed that natural gas is responsible for 61% of overall power sector CO2 reductions since 2005, and that's 57% more than the reductions attributable to renewable energy sources. So global warming is a big challenge to be sure, but once again, the oil and gas industry can help solve it. And we have proven that over the long term, it's possible to lead in energy production and environmental stewardship. Another big challenge for us that we're working on right now is the listing of the lesser prairie chicken. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service listed it, lesser prairie chicken as threatened in Kansas, effective January 24th of this year. They also listed it as an endangered in the southern segment, which is mainly western Texas and eastern New Mexico. And as an association, we have long advocated that the best scientific and commercial information available demonstrates that the lesser prairie chicken does not meet the Endangered Species Act definitions of either threatened or endangered. And we're currently evaluating, challenges to that listing. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Department of Interior in particular appears to have violated their own procedures. None of the 5 factors utilized by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service under the Endangered Species Act to determine if a species is threatened or endangered are present in the case of the lesser prairie chicken. There's no overutilization, there's no disease, there's adequate regulatory mechanisms, there's no natural factors, and it has a stable and growing habitat. So basically, there's no basis for action. And I know that our congressional delegation, U.S. Senator Roger Marshall, is leading an effort to delay the final rule from January 24th, I think, to April the 1st, to give more time to do that. We're working with our counterparts in Oklahoma and Texas as well to look at some potential challenges. Also, we have the waters of the U.S., which is another EPA proposal that's offering more restricted definition of the waters of the U.S., and it's another action that will likely be challenged in court. Another challenging issue for us is the ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Activists have increasingly set their sights on the financial sector and legal system, not Congress, for pushing aggressive climate agenda. These activists want to use non-legislative ways to impose perceived climate costs and raise the price of energy. And one of the ways they're doing that is under the guise of ESG, environmental social governance. So employing so-called ESG initiatives, some financial institution and government agencies espouse policies that prioritize a focus on factors unrelated to a company's bottom line. So ESG forces investors and company managers to view company operations through the eyes of a vocal set of stakeholders for whom a company's climate reputation is of equal or greater importance than the company's financial performance. So what we believe, Cuyahoga believes, and we've written letters to different organizations as well as state and federal, that we believe financial institutions should award financing based on unbiased, non-political basis. And as oil and gas companies not asking for special treatment, we're just simply asking for financial institutions to be unbiased in their assessments. Now, if I can change the focus to some of the state challenges that we have here, well, our state challenges are similar for many other industries, and that's the labor market. You know, a tight labor market makes it difficult to find qualified workers. And this is caused by a number of things. You know, the demographics, a lot of baby boomers are exiting the market, an overly heated economy, which increases competition among employers. Also, there's a lot of friction in the within the labor market, which is time needed to develop the new skills and the new processes, and all of that is making the labor market tight. And that's part of, we were very busy last year, but our activity would have been even more in Kansas if we had had more labor and more equipment. As far as the Kansas Corporation Commission, environmental responsible oil and gas production requires good and effective regulation. And we believe as an industry in the state regulatory process, and the Kansas Corporation Commission does an excellent job in regulating the oil and gas industry. I might say that part of a lot of groups, including the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission, where KCC is used as a model by several oil and gas states on regulating the oil and gas industry. It is good that the KCC commissioners are appointed rather than elected, and that should remain that way. Other states have elected commissioners that do have elected commissioners, have seen the commissioners favor policies that prioritize their donors, denying everyday citizens the opportunity to have their voices heard. And so, it's important to keep our appointment process now where the governor makes that appointment of the KCC commissioners. Electric rates is another big concern for our industry as well as others. I know we always relish opportunity to work with others to find solutions to the electric rates. We don't have the answer to that, but we would like to help find the answer with others affected parties on that. Electric costs are the highest operating costs for oil and gas wells, ranging from anywhere from 30 to 50% of an oil well's expense. So we support, legislative studies on the competitiveness of Kansas electric rates, and we look forward to participating in discussions on ways to help address high electric costs. Carbon capture is another something that looks at, and when we look at that, if eminent domain is used, condemnation is used to develop a pipeline to transport CO2, ammonia, or hydrogen, that's a good thing. We're supportive of that. But sometimes we have some issues with using condemnation or eminent domain to condemn subsurface strata. That could be very harmful to landowners, mineral owners, Kansas taxpayers, and the oil and gas industry. So there's significant risk and costs associated with carbon capture rules that mean that lots of oil and gas operators in Kansas probably would not participate in something like that. It takes you 2 years to get a permit to do that. Then it takes 2 years to get the necessary equipment. So you're talking about at least 4 years if everything goes right in order to do that. So it's a very complicated issue with potential for lots of unintended consequences. So as I wrap it up here, I just want to look at, what powers the U.S. today. When you look at the United States, oil is 36% of energy consumption, natural gas 32%, coal 11%, wind and solar 5%. So 79% is fossil fuels. And when we look at what will power the world, not just the U.S., but the world in the future, the Energy Information Administration estimates that by 2045, world energy demand will increase by 23%, and 69% of that demand would be supplied by fossil fuels. 50% of global energy needs in 2045 will be supplied by oil and gas. Renewable energies are projected to grow significantly between now and 2045, providing 10.9% of global energy needs by 2045. Global oil consumption is projected to go 14% between now and 2035. Natural gas consumption is projected to go 37%. Renewable energy sources are projected to continue their growth streak, but renewable energy remains too unreliable and expensive to be a primary energy source. So while the ambitious pledges from various international bodies and governments would suggest that the energy transition is near, the gap between theory and reality is vast. Fossil fuels supplied 82% of global energy needs in 2021, and it will likely be decades before an energy transition can take place. The energy transition may have begun, but it will certainly be a long time before fossil fuel dominance will be truly challenged. So in closing, let me say that the oil and gas industry shares an energy future vision with the public. We and our families live and work right here in Kansas, and we care as much as anyone about the people's needs and concerns and our environment. And we take these issues and concerns very seriously. The mission of our industry is to empower people, improve lives, and inspire success. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would conclude and would stand for questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Cross. It's always good to hear from you there. Committee, do we have any questions? Representative Roth, go ahead.
I just want to make a comment on putting those lesser prairie chickens, on the endangered species list. I've been in the field for over 60 years. The issue that we have with quail, prairie chickens, and pheasants and other wildlife is the dominance of coyotes, foxes, bobcats, hawks, owls. They're destroying the population, and so I really don't like other agencies looking at other items saying it's going to cause a problem when the real facts are that for Kansas, for the wild game in Kansas, like prairie chickens and stuff, those are dominated by hawks and owls and foxes and coyotes and snakes and all kinds of other wildlife that eat them. And so just a comment on that. So thanks for letting me speak, Chairman.
I would agree. Yep.
Okay. Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ed, again for the presentation. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about natural gas again. Last summer, natural gas prices were pretty high for a summertime schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody was expecting them to go up once the winter hit, but what we've seen is a really marked decline. And can you talk about that? Is that production related? Is it just temperature, temperature related? So people are heating less with natural gas, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. You're talking about the natural gas decline in prices you're talking about? Or?
Yes. Right.
Yes. So, the United States is a big producer of natural gas. And so, it's whenever we start getting more of our natural gas online, then we provide more supply. That hasn't happened a lot over the last year, but we have seen a decrease in demand, because of a slowdown or recession. And so that has, in not only here, but also in Europe and other places. So that has reduced the demand for that gas, which put downward pressure on that. I don't know, going forward, I think there might be a small rebound on that, but certainly in the wintertime, if there's a hard winter, that certainly increases demand on natural. I don't know what the 5-year, what the inventory level is right now offhand. I could find that for you, but
it's kind of getting back to normal, the inventory levels, which is kind of unusual in the winter. So I just kind of was wondering what your thoughts on how that kind of switched around from what people were expecting. So.
Yeah, my thoughts on that, and as well as I do, is a lot about supply and demand.
Sure.
And that's not that we want to see. I mean, we want to see natural gas prices where we can make a good living on that. We don't want natural gas prices to be astronomical. That doesn't really help anyone. So we're not wishing for a hard winter anywhere, but we also want to see demand stay up enough to keep them at a reasonable level.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, for Representative Siepen? Got it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask if you could give us a little bit of your perspective on the recent oil spill and perhaps causes for it and how mitigation is going.
Certainly. First of all, TC is the company there that is dealing with that. They are not a member of Cuyahoga, so I can't really speak for them. But there is no release of information on what caused the spill. But the site has been maintained, and it's been impressive on their cleanup of that site. There's no drinking water wells have been impacted. The site has been contained. Emergency response company officials are all working together to ensure that spill is handled. On that, TC Energy has mobilized, what did they say, 800 workers on site to pick that up. And they got the pipeline back up and running by the end of the year, by the end of December, I should say, December of 2022. So I know that's really all I know about that, that spill in particular. It's the downstream part of the industry. They're not a member of Cuyahoga, so I don't want to speak for them in any way. So, but yeah.
And Representative, if I could make a comment on that, I have been reaching out to Ken Eccles and TC Pipeline. I am fully expecting them to come in to this committee a little bit later on here because I really want an update. I'd like to know what happened and what all has gone on to mitigate future issues coming up. But excellent question.
Yeah, and thank you. I was hoping somebody would answer that so that let them know that I don't know. So,
any other questions? Could I get my ranking member here he's got a question here, Representative O'Hopson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony today. You talked about the labor market affecting your industry. Has the labor market had any impact with respect to the output of both oil and gas in your industry?
Yes, I mean we have wells that not only labor but also the capital. So when I say that is they have a lot of wells that we did a lot of drilling this year, and they have a lot of well service units, which goes out and repairs wells and gets them back on. So sometimes like the companies may have more drilling rigs or more well service units. They just don't have personnel to go work on them. So there's a waiting list. The operators will go out there and they need something done, whether it's a service, a cementing service, or well service, or drilling a well, and they get on a waiting list not because the company doesn't have the equipment to do it, but because they don't have enough personnel to do all of that. So and it's not, they do have to train them. They I can give you an example of one operator said that on one of their well service units, they were trying to get a crew. The requirements for this, they would train them, would be a GED and pass a drug test. $24 an hour, and they would pay health insurance for them and their family, but they couldn't get any takers.
So in essence, you're saying that basically, since we have a labor shortage, pretty much it has affected the output of
absolutely,
oil and
absolutely,
gas.
yes, it has.
Okay,
That's a long answer for yes, it has.
Okay. Another comment you made was in regards to electric costs. And you said you're going to have a debate as to how it's affecting your industry. Could you share with us a little bit about what you mean by that in terms of your perspective with respect to how do we actually reduce electric costs for your industry?
Yes, and I think I did say I don't have the answer for that, but I do think that we need to get together and look at. I think we have one of the highest electric retail costs of this region, and we need to look at why is that. There needs to be a study as to why is Kansas electric rate so much higher than other states. We can all give opinions as why it's that, but we just need to get some real data and facts out there to understand why. We have operators that operate in other states like Oklahoma or something. Their electric rates are much different than they are here, and so that's what we want to participate in. I think everybody needs to do a study of that, and we need to look at the electric rate structure here in Kansas, not only for oil and gas, but for all citizens out there, because we are one of the highest rates in the region.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Representative Berquist.
Thank you, Mr. Cost, for being here. Question probably we've asked before, but because the climate of political world changes and ebbs and flows, with the issue of replacing fossil fuels eventually with other sources, when that conversation happens, how much does that affect independent oil companies and producers as far as their ability to get labor, to feel like exploring more oil wells. How much does that restrain them from open exploration?
Okay, let me make sure I understand your question. So, conversation on other forms of energy, how that affects.
Yeah, as it increases at certain times where there's an absolute emphasis, like on a deadline to replace fossil fuels, does that minimize the creativity of a good producer to be able to go and explore, or does he start to, or he or she begin to decline their interest and back out?
Okay,
I may not be a direct question to answer, but maybe I think you understand.
no, yes, I do, and that's a very good question. So does oil and gas operators, does it affect their operations whenever they talk out there that we're going to be completely off fossil fuels by a certain time in the future? It hasn't affected oil and gas producers as of right now. Like I said, I gave you some statistics where they show that fossil fuels are still going to be a big part of the energy mix even in 2045. So they know that we're going to have that now. We need all forms of energy. We are an industry that believes in all forms of energy. So we know that there's going to be other forms of energy, but it's going to be quite some time before most of them believe that there's going to be quite some time before we're completely off fossil fuels.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. I think we need to cut it off at this point because the next speaker needs some time to get up there. But Mr. Cross, I appreciate you coming up. Please keep in contact, and I've got a few questions we can do offline. But,
okay.
All right. Next up is WANRAC, internet provider. I believe it is Mike Bergman and David Soffer. All right. Welcome to the committee, and take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the committee. David Sofer, Director of Business Development at WANRAC. It's great to be back in this building testifying. Kind of weird not testifying on commerce issues for a change, even though it's been a little bit. But it's great to see so many familiar faces and some new faces as well. We wanted to talk to you today about, just what WANRAC's doing, some exciting times for us, for our company, and what's going on ahead. So actually was chatting with Mike, and Mike had never testified before. So rather than me hog the mic, as I've usually done in this building, actually decided that we'll let Mike be able to share with you, again, what's going on at WANRAC and why it's exciting times ahead for us. Go ahead.
Thank you, David. Good morning, and thank you for the honor and privilege to provide a brief overview about WANRAC. I don't think most of you have had the opportunity to know too much about us, but we've been in the state for a little over 10 years. The company was founded by Rob Euler, a native Kansan, and we're based in Overland Park. And the company originally started as a private fiber networking company, specifically targeting anchor institutions. So whether it be K-12 school districts, universities, hospital systems, libraries, financial institutions, there was a unique need for private fiber networks for campus-wide environments and what we call wide area networks. So the company was founded on that, and we've transitioned and broadened our horizons over the last few years. Namely, about 2 years ago, we were acquired by CBRE Infrastructure Management, which is one of the largest infrastructure funds in the world. And that's, as having CBRE as a capital partner has really enabled us to really throw some gas on the fire, so to speak. But, we've been able to expand rapidly, and we're looking at continuing to expand our portfolio and our footprint as well. So today, WANRAC provides a variety of fiber-based services. Again, our initial go-to-market strategy was building wide area networks to anchor institutions. We've expanded that into public-private partnerships, where we also do what's called a middle-mile network, specifically for cities and counties. And we've recently started moving into fiber to the premises, where we're providing a commercial service to businesses and moving in toward residential as well. In addition to supplying fiber backhaul for cell sites. So by doing fiber to the tower and being able to provide basically a future-proof, high capacity solution. It's enabled the wireless industry to go to things like, 4G, LTE, 5G, and future opportunities as well. So, if I leave you with any single impression today, in our opinion, fiber is the future. Fiber is the future proof investment that we think as Kansans and certainly as private investors that we're making for our future. So we are a broadband provider today. We do operate in 23 states. Kansas is home for us, and a large footprint here in Kansas. But we are a certified competitive local exchange carrier, certificated by the Public Service Commission, but we don't currently receive any funding from Universal Service Fund. So as David mentioned, we have been expanding rapidly, especially in the last 24 months since our acquisition. We've grown about 300%. As the previous speaker said, with the tight labor markets, things are a little bit challenging to find personnel. We want to grow faster. We have the potential and the need and the desire to do that. We are actively hiring in multiple positions across various business disciplines. I would say the one discipline that we tend to struggle the most with filling are more of the technical nature positions. But we're certainly working to address that. I know the governor has some initiatives. There's some other initiatives with veteran transition programs and other technical schools. So we're continuing to work with those folks and see what options are out there for us for our needs today and into the future. We certainly anticipate an even greater demand as we continue to grow. But 80% of our workforce, is based here in Kansas. So WANREC has what we consider to be kind of a unique approach to the marketplace. We generally go in and go with the school district first. Most K-12 school districts have variations of wide area networking opportunities, and so there's a federal program known as the E-rate program, which is equal to the school's free and reduced lunch program, and that program also includes charter schools and private schools in terms of eligibility. And we generally look for opportunities to support K-12 schools that have that need, that fall in the the parameters of the opportunities that we're looking for, and we'll put together a proposal, work with the school, understand their needs, and then it's an RFP process. So we compete openly and transparently in the RFP response, and hopefully win the opportunity. And when we do win that opportunity for the school district, that really sets the stage for other things that we can do. So when we win those opportunities, when you're building out a school network, if you can imagine, there's maybe a couple of high schools, depending on the size of the community, obviously, but a couple of high schools, a couple of junior highs, multiple middle schools, bus barns, those sort of things. So you're pretty much touching just about every part of a community when you're building that wide area network. And by doing that, what we're able to do is invest ourselves and overbuild additional fibers. And then, of course, those fibers are available for other opportunities. So that's kind of the playbook. So, and we believe that approach, really allows for very efficient, capital utilization and provides for more effective opportunity for additional build out, that can be benefited by the residents and business owners in the area as well. So the special construction program, is administered by E-rate. Is kind of a unique program, and it won't be around forever. But in 2016, they introduced that program to utilize in what they call Category 1, which is effectively infrastructure, specifically to fund new wide area networks for the school districts. So, we use that program, and by utilizing that program, the school district's able to get basically a capital project, mostly subsidized by the federal government for that program through USAC. So it's a great program, for the schools to take advantage of. And many of the states, Kansas being one of them, also have a matching component. So as an example, if the school district has an 80% free and reduced lunch program, and the state has a 10% state matching program, E-rate also has a state matching program predicated on the state match. So in the case of an 80% school district, USAC will cover the first 80% of an award. If the state match program covers the other 10%, then E-rate will kick in the other 10% on top of that, making it effectively a free capital project for the school district. So we try to take advantage of that where the right opportunities exist and the stars can align. Excuse me. And we really think we have a differentiated, proposal that, to our customers in the marketplace too. So, coming from an incumbent background, the legacy networks tend to have a lot of, they've been built evolutionarily over time and tend to have a lot of points of failure in the network. And we can, of course, respect that with trying to maximize, assets that are in the ground. That's the most expensive part of running a communications company. But one of the benefits that we bring to the table in these, especially the E-rate type of opportunities, is it's a greenfield build. So we're going in with a blank canvas. So when we're doing that, we're able to avoid having multiple, locations within the local market where we're introducing potential points of failure. It's basically an express lane from, the school district's data center to the elementary school or to the high school or whatever the case may be. We don't pass through a bunch of different equipment that could potentially, lead to more issues and downtime, especially as equipment ages out.
Could I stop you for just a second?
Yes, sir.
Members, are you familiar with the term E-rate? Do you know what it is? Okay, would you mind diving in just a little bit? I'm extremely well knowledge in E-rate. I used to help with it for years and years from a telco perspective. But
Mr. Chairman, you probably do a better job than to explain with me, but humor me and I'll give it a go.
Go ahead. Appreciate it.
I've been in the industry 25 years, but I'm really more of a wholesale and commercial guy. Our founder, Rob Wheeler's really the kind of the thought leader and subject matter expert on the E-rate side. But E-rate is a program that is funded and administered by USAC, and it's funded by the Universal Service Program. So anytime you see your phone bill and you see the USF fee, effectively a tax, that universal service pool, is managed by the FCC under USAC, and within USAC is the program called E-rate that was specifically put together to subsidize the cost of broadband access and telecommunications needs for K-12 school districts and libraries and in some cases hospitals and universities. Is that fair? Okay. Excuse me. So currently today, WANRAC has 5 school districts in the state of Kansas. We, of course, intend to grow that, over time. I'm very excited about the districts that we do have today. But one exciting announcement that we've had was last week. On January 12th, we signed a deal to acquire a Iola, Kansas-based ISP called Quickcom, KWIKOM, if anyone's familiar with them. So Quickcom has been an ISP for a little over 12 years. They do fiber to the home in about 8 rural markets today, and they do fixed wireless broadband service across 75 counties, primarily the eastern half of Kansas today. They have a full complement of residential and business services, including, voice platform and a video platform. And we anticipate closing by the end of Q1 here, subject to additional, regulatory approvals and a couple of minor hurdles to jump over. But we're very excited about that opportunity. We think the complement of the foundational fiber networks that we're building, layered with the service capabilities and the portfolio that Quickcom brings to the table, is kind of that quintessential 1 + 1 = 3, scenario. So we're very excited to announce that, and hopefully we'll get that deal closed very soon. So in closing, I would leave you with a few recommendations, from our perspective across the state. Continue to look for ways to invest in middle mile and other strategic fiber opportunities. Again, fiber to us is the future-proof path. So we strongly encourage continued investment in fiber. The state's done a great job to this point, and I know there's quite a few initiatives underway to continue that. So we're very supportive of that. And of course, any way that we can continue to create workforce solutions, that would enhance broadband rollout, as the previous speaker had mentioned, there's a lot more equipment and a lot more opportunity than there are folks that are qualified or willing to do some of the jobs. So in our case, we generally contract or subcontract most of our construction, and it's a fairly lengthy proficiency, training program to get up to the point where, someone is considered proficient and safe at running a directional boring rig, for example, right? They're navigating through power lines and sewer lines and gas lines and all sorts of other things. So, we want to make sure that we have very competent, professionals in the space there. And our contractors and subcontractors are sharing with us, the struggles they have getting folks to work as well. So If there are any creative solutions that are out there, we certainly would love to support those. Again, we're looking into things like veteran transition programs and state schools, technical schools specifically. What sort of initiatives can be undertaken there to continue to enhance those programs. We're huge advocates of that. And and then lastly, I would leave you with the ongoing telecommunications challenges of occasionally working with cities, counties, and jurisdictional authorities relative to rights of way and certainly permitting processes. So I think there are elements of it that have gotten a little bit better over the years. We have a statewide initiative. I know it's one of the governor's top initiatives to expand broadband and make sure that we don't have unserved folks in the state. And we certainly applaud and support that and are stepping up to do our part. But to the extent that there's the ability to help, influence the potential softening of some of those permitting challenges and rights of way challenges, we would be very grateful for your assistance in that.
Okay.
So with that, I'll wrap up, Mr. Chairman. Leave it open to any questions. I intended to be brief, so I'm happy to answer any questions if I blew through it too fast.
Oh, appreciate your input there. Representative Carmichael, would you like to start out?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Soffer. During the course of your presentation, I thought I understood you to say, and by the way, I left one of my hearing aids in Wichita today, so I can't hear very well. But I thought I heard you to say that WANRAC is certified by the Public Service Commission?
We're a CLEC, a competitive local exchange carrier. We don't currently offer local service in Kansas today.
I apologize, but I'm not familiar with what it means to be certified by the Public Service Commission, and I don't even know what the Public Service Commission is in Kansas. Could you enlighten me?
Oh, I apologize. So the certification is a state certification that allows us to provide a competitive local service within the state. Competitive
certification by whom?
I thought it was the Public Service Commission. I apologize if
I know there's a Missouri Public Service Commission. Is there a commission in Kansas called the Public Service Commission? Never mind. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Corporation Commission. I apologize. I apologize. Excuse me.
Good to go. You're quick on your feet. I appreciate that, sir. And thank you for your testimony here today, and Mr. Sofer as well. I just had two quick questions, and you can answer them if you're at liberty to say. Are you all very successful with WANRAC in securing the projects, capturing those opportunities for the construction projects under, what was it called, E-rate, the special construction projects?
From our perspective, we think we're successful. Like I said, we've grown about 300% in the last 2 years, so we would define that as successful. But obviously, we'd love to do more.
Okay. And the second one that I have is dealing with redundancy and security of the network. When you construct that network backbone, that architecture with fiber, and you leave extra fiber for it to connect for other things in the future, is there any appetite, any thought toward redundancy, maybe with SATCOM? Is that something that you might be expanding into?
We haven't given any consideration to that today. The fiber optics work at the speed of light, and obviously, voice and video are very latency sensitive applications. So there's certainly been some significant advancements in satellite technology recently. I came from a technical background, but I'll be honest with you, I sheathed my technical sword many years ago, so I haven't kept up with the technology. But I know, at least through the industry trade magazines and newsletters and things that I keep up on at a super high level, there's been some great advancements, but we haven't delved into it in great detail to see if that's a great backup option for us. Of course, we love fiber rings, which to me, that's the epitome of absolute resilience.
Absolutely, sir. And Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for the latitude. I would be most interested to talk with you all, as well as Representative Proctor, about some things with Fort Huachuca and NetCom, and seeing if we can do some things to transition good soldiers out of Signal Corps into helping you.
It'll be our pleasure. We'll leave contact info.
Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Brigman. Is WANRAC primarily communities, incorporated cities, or is it more in the rural areas? In my area, Quickcom had been a provider out in the rural areas, but not in the city. So I was just curious, are you focusing on one or the other? Or?
We don't have a specific focus on a specific demographic or city size. It's really more the analytics of the opportunity, and can we make that opportunity work in our model. So we've got school district networks that are as small as 3 miles and as large as 120 miles, just literally the private wide area network for the school. So we're happy to cover the spectrum, and we certainly recognize the need, obviously, with the Quickcom acquisition as well. I've spent the majority of my career in what I would define as rural telecom. So we certainly, appreciate and understand the need and the vacuum that's out there that needs to be filled.
Yeah. A lot of my residents are anxious to get reliable service that with maintenance provided to at a timely manner. So
absolutely.
Anyway, thank you again for your time and presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Roth, do you have a question?
You mentioned the hiring struggle, which is nationwide for about anything. You talked about technical schools. So have you been in contact with community colleges and technical schools in regard to the skill set that you need for the people that you need to hire for your business?
I'd have to refer to my HR manager. She's taken the initiative as of, a couple of months ago. I know they're working with the governor's office on some initiatives they have there, and she was reaching out to some technical schools, and I don't have resolution on that just yet, but we are also, evaluating a couple of veteran transition programs. As a veteran myself, obviously that's, kind of near and dear to my heart, but we're looking into that as well.
Yeah, and if I may add to that. So one of the things we've looked at, so we're in 23 states. One of the things, that we've seen unique is the state of Ohio actually has created a program, and they've invested $500 million to create a program that actually is run by Ohio State University and the tech schools, and is industry driven. So industry leaders are helping to train those individuals, get them out to work really quick with a certificate. That would be one of the things. Certainly, I know I've had a conversation with the lieutenant governor and our workforce department, and being able to try to implement something, not necessarily as grand because they started their program in 2020 and it's taken a couple of years to get up and running, but take little bits and pieces of that and be able to implement it. Because I think, when you're able to have a workforce program that's industry driven and have those individuals be in constant contact with those industry leaders, I think it's it drives the efficiency in being able to get them to work pretty quick and be able to train them in exactly what they need in a short time period. So that's something that I know we have been in contact with the state and a couple of those tech schools, and we're trying to be able to, offer, some of the solutions that we've seen in other states. So that way, you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel, but if you can take little bits and pieces that work and you can implement rather quickly, that can be a huge benefit, especially as a lot of those grant dollars in broadband come about, and you're going to have all these projects that are going to be implemented or have to be done in the same time window. And so it's really important to make sure we have that workforce available.
I know the community colleges in my district they're hungry. So if they know about something, they're actively trying to provide a solution for if you needed a certificate program or you need a specialized skill or something like that. I know that they are actively pursuing anything that comes along. And I've had conversations with the community college president and the Southwestern College president as well. But more or less, the community college and tech schools that I've been in contact with or have contacted me, they're hungry. That they want to train people and get them to work, get them in the workforce, because we're low workforce in the workforce in a lot of areas. So I would highly recommend that you maybe contact some of the community colleges and see what they can do to help with this labor shortage.
Definitely.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting me speak.
Absolutely. Any other questions while they're here? If not, I've got a couple I'd like to throw at you, and just trying to better understand your model here. So is your organization focused on the E-rate customers, or do you have other private sectors you do?
We do have other private sectors. The E-rate was really the core business of WANRAC when I joined 2.5 years ago, and part of my coming on board was to provide diversity options. That E-rate's not my background. I'm come from a technical background. In fact, for about 4 years prior to joining WANRAC, I ran the Kansas Fiber Network, which is wholly owned by 29 of the independent telephone companies across the state. So I'm very familiar with that rural model. But and with the acquisition of Quickcom, that was part of that strategy, that diversification strategy.
Okay. So do you assist any of the schools in filing of E-rates or provide input?
We absolutely do, to the extent that the law, or excuse me, the rules and regulations that govern the E-rate procurement process allow. And it's a pretty stringent procurement process. So there's a point of delineation that we can offer some advice on the front end, and then has to go through the process, and we have to, win through a transparent RFP process.
Okay. And you're obviously familiar, E-rate's got tier 1, tier 2 type monies.
Correct.
Tier 2, if there's funds left over type thing. So do you and your organization provide services beyond the demarcation point?
Not currently, but that's also part of that portfolio expansion. So we're primarily oriented on category 1, the physical infrastructure.
Okay. And obviously, so you are an ISP today. Is that a correct
Yes.
statement? Or where would you put yourself, tier 1, 2, 3?
In terms of like the transit side, I would say tier 2. We're buying from global transit providers upstream. So we have data centers, and we have four different data centers across the country that we will tap into.
Okay. And then on the, I'm going to call it private fiber. So are you putting in your own fiber, or you lease an IRUs, or what?
No, we're constructing everything brand new. So yeah, and we're going in, with count in excess of the minimum that would take to service the school district.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you both for being here.
It's our pleasure. Thank you. Have a great day.
Committee, that does conclude for today. Thursday, we're looking at a presentation on kind of an overview of water from the water department, and might be a little bit different for utilities, but due to what we heard last Thursday, I think it may become a player in there. And so looking forward to that. And then also on Thursday, John Federico is going to be here talking about the Kansas Cable Telecom Association. So optional. All right. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.